Hey Nick, so WWDC launched yesterday, and it has the entire design community in shambles over this liquid glass thing. But I think it might be distract us from the amazing features that they've launched yesterday. I think
True.
liquid glass is lower on the totem pole for the amount of like really cool features that they launched.
Yeah. And people are maybe a little bit angry about liquid glass and readability, but then at the same time, I see lots of designers asking for a Figma tutorial to replicate it, to build their own liquid glass in their designs. So I'm not really sure what people want here. Like, are they angry? Are they happy? We are kind of live now. This is what I always wanted to say. We are live.
And we're officially live.
We are officially live, exactly. I mean, this is just an experiment. Are they happy? Something in between? And like you say, I mean, how about Spotlight? Like the new improvements they have there. We're forgetting about it. All we're talking about is liquid glass.
Yeah, I think the problem is I think Apple has been like at the forefront of design trends and leading the charge and like innovating in design. So I think we're looking to them like, what's the new design trend from Apple? But I think the competitive landscape has gotten really competitive, for lack of a better word. So I think they pushed too hard on this liquid glass thing. Which I think is a really nice design treatment when it's used correctly. But I think they were overly reliant on their design system. So they applied liquid glass to one component and then it trickled down to all their components. So I think it's a really nice touch when applied in the correct place, like in the video interface, where the use case there is we have these UI buttons, but you're watching a movie and we don't want to distract you watching the movie, so we make them clear so you can see what's happening in the background. But other places not so nice. So I think there's an opportunity to treat different screens with different UI treatments and not just blanket liquid UI everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, what you're saying about the video makes me think about like old school hero section design, where you have like your background picture, then you have, for example, text on top of it or dark text on a bright background. And when the text isn't readable enough, you put in like a 10% opacity background between the background and the text just to make the text more readable. They did something similar with the liquid glass for videos. Like, well, the video, you could be in a very bright scene and then you don't see the pause or the play button. Well, let's add a drop of liquid glass behind it, and that's very cool. One thing that I think, most people forget is, or haven't done yet, which is kind of ironic, is Apple launched a in-depth video, like introducing liquid glass. And then you have like 3 people working at Apple and they explain how to use liquid glass and where and when not, and different options that you have, like how much transparency you have. And during that video, they talk much more about readability and accessibility compared to the very nice like marketing keynote, basically, which is basically a commercial. So they thought more about accessibility than it appears. Like, I think people see the screenshot, they get angry, they post about the screenshot, but I think there's more in the background. They thought more about accessibility than people know, which you could say is maybe an Apple mistake to not push it more, or it's our social media laziness. I'm not sure, perhaps both. So long answer short, there are already like less liquid UI components, the sidebar and that kind of stuff, and I think in settings as well. And with this being a preview, multiple betas versions and alpha versions will be launched before the ultimate launch in like probably September or October. Like, I'm sure they'll iron out a few kinks here and there. Well, I hope so, at least, because there are a few big misses here and there of what I've seen.
I think they have a giant audience that is very vocal with their opinion. So I think they're going to take the feedback to heart, and they're going to be kind of fixing things that were kind of caught. But I think sometimes it's hard to catch all those edge cases, because oftentimes when you're designing things, you're attaching the correct image that looks perfect with the liquid glass. Maybe it was like the initial mock-ups or like the treatment of liquid glass against particular backgrounds were perfect, but in certain edge cases, it doesn't give like the best results, which they'll tackle. But you had mentioned something there about like how do we replicate it in Figma? And to my knowledge, I don't think it is at all possible in Figma, which well, I think continues the trend of they probably experimented in code
Mm.
to come up with that end result. So I think we're seeing again we're continuing the pattern where I think design is doing things in code, experimenting in code rather than staying in Figma, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Well, I think it's interesting what you're saying because normally when I see something visual,
Mhm.
more or less know how you would make it and recreate it in code,
Mhm.
because I've been doing that long enough. Like, oh, that's, this bit of CSS and you need a plugin or a framework here and there. But how the breaking of the light behind the liquid glass, for example, appears so complex to me that I have no clue how they made it. It's probably something they did, like, perhaps in a native way. Not sure if I'm saying something silly now, but I don't know how to create it. And
Yeah.
that's a thing. And probably you shouldn't even spend your time recreating it in Figma. I feel like that's a waste of your time.
Yeah, I think so. I think they leverage um I think they leverage something from because of a background in like 3D animation. I think they leverage some 3D like some tools that are leveraged in like movies and TV shows for like special effects.
Yeah.
So like the refraction of the light, that's like a specific shader that you would leverage in like a 3D modeling tool, like Maya or any of the I don't know what the new tools are for 3D, but like some of those new tools are using. That's which is interesting because we're going away from the trend of flat design, it seems like. Um, and going full on 3D is interesting.
What kind of full circle, isn't it? Like it's not skeuomorphism really, but it is coming more alive
Mm.
compared to the very minimalistic flat stuff.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you saw, was it a month or two ago? Google launched their new design system,
Yeah.
and they did some market research into kind of the younger generation that's growing up and starting to use these like phones and computers, etc. And they, according to polls, they're looking for more emotional design, which is interesting. So I think Google, if you take a look at what they've done, everything is color and high contrast. Everything has emotion. There's a lot of animation, which I think Apple copied a bit, but I think Google executed like to the T. Because everything is very like contrary to like the liquid glass, which is just very stark and very scientist in a lab looking. Um, I think they could use a bit of like emotion and kind of like a bit more drama into the UI. It's missing a bit of like personality.
Yeah, well, the whole liquid glass, like it's transparent, like it's watery. It's like a drop on your screen.
Mm.
I think they went full focus on the content. Like it's all about let's not make the UI colorful because your vacation pictures or the pictures of your pets, like that's all the color you need to see.
Mm.
I think. I don't know. I wasn't there in the meetings, but I feel like that's what they're going for because I think they mentioned that quite a few times where they say like if there's now more room for your content, you know.
Mm.
And I feel a bit old for saying this because the Google stuff I think was a little bit too much, too bold and too colorful. I like it. It looks great, but I'm not sure if I will like it if I would have an Android phone and use it like every day, the whole day.
Yeah, I guess that, well, but also you may not be the target market.
That's true. That's probably true. But the same applies also to the liquid glass. Like it looks cool, I think, in certain places, but I'm not super excited to install the new or the latest version, later this year, for the liquid glass. For some other features, what you started with this meeting or the meeting, listen to me, this this recording. I've been in meetings all day. Sorry, I have my corporate hat on still. Anyway, where was I? I'm not looking forward perhaps to the liquid glass, but I am looking forward to some of the new features. Like you said, they don't get enough attention. It's, in the design world, it's liquid glass this, liquid glass that. So I'm a bit split, to be honest. Like, should I install it? Yes or no? They have cool features, but currently it's looking so great. What should I do? What do you think? What should you do? Would you do? I have to say.
Yeah, I think they just dropped the ball when it comes to like marketing and sales 101. Like they did like we went over Liquid Glass. They had a whole promotional video about this Liquid Glass, which
Yeah.
should have just been something that was in the background that we noticed and they didn't talk about at all. And I think it might have gone over well. But like when you're pitching a product and you're selling something, it's what does it do for me, right? So,
Yeah.
and that goes into like the features that I think are really awesome that they just were just overshadowed by this Liquid Glass UI stuff.
Yeah.
I think my favorite feature is the what's that call screening.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think probably everyone has received like scam calls from like these numbers, these wrong numbers, and then you're nervous just to pick up a unknown number call just because you don't want to jump on like one of those calls where it's from a number not from your country and someone asking you trying to steal your information.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that I think the UX is if it's an unknown number, it triggers an agent to ask who's calling, and then it shows you via text who's calling, and then from there you can accept. So it's like this filtering layer of these unknown numbers, and they can actually pick up the numbers that are relevant. So you're not nervous to answer calls, but I think is amazing because I get prank calls or spam calls like on the daily basis. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not daily, but quite often, and there's a lot of AI calling, where I'm not sure if you have those type of scam calls, but it's like this clearly cheap AI voice, like, "Hello, I have this job opening for you," that kind of stuff. I'm very curious how that works from the other side. Like, imagine I would call you, but I have a new phone number because of whatever reason, like a previous SIM card got blocked or whatever, and then your phone does not recognize my number, and then like I'm just curious how it is if you're the calling person. Like, do I get like the AI agent? Like, I might think that you are scamming me because I hear some sort of AI-like voice, like asking me, like, "Hey, who are you?" And the same thing also with the hold option they have, which is very, very nice. Like, imagine you call to your doctor, and then you are third in line, and then you're waiting, and then like, how long does the assistant on the other end wait before thinking this is a fake call or the person in line has gone away? Like, you need to be very quick when your phone does ring, like, "Hey, you're first, now you can pick up." This is not me saying that it's a bad experience. This is just me being curious, like how it works in practice. Android has it already.
Do they?
But I have no clue how. Yeah, I think I saw someone mention like Android has this already, or Google Pixel phones have it.
I'm not surprised. They're usually the first one.
Yeah, that's true.
Where they have.
Yeah. So I'm just curious how it is like on the other end.
I mean, it's just like I think we're all getting a bit like. I think it's just like if you're an executive and you have an executive assistant that's calling out, trying to connect calls. So like they're all calling your behalf to book reservations or to connect you to a specific client. And there's just a buffer layer. I think just we're all just getting granted that executive layer where it's in between. I think it's mimicking what we already have or some people have. So I think we all have we're all going to get our own customer success representative just on the other line. Like, "Hi, are you calling? Who is it? Oh, this is it." And then they'll connect you right away. But I think in Apple fashion, you'll probably be able to skip the line if you have a bit of text that you're calling from an Apple phone. So it's probably an extension of the blue bubble, green bubble.
Yeah, that's probably true. I wouldn't be surprised, at least. Do you think Apple, or not Apple, do you think we as a design community put too much hype on the design change?
I think it's a mix of both. So it goes back to what I said about like a poor job in marketing. Like Liquid Glass, like they should have been pushing the features and the benefits to our lives, which should have made like those other features that we're kind of covering more important. In addition to like we looked at Apple for like design over the last decade of like being at the forefront of like design innovation, and I think they just fell a bit flat, which is understandable why we're so up in an uproar. A bit too aggressive in my point. I've seen like my entire LinkedIn and Twitter feed is just filled with Liquid Glass complaints. There are small voices of like, I actually do like it. It's actually a nice treatment, but I think the overwhelming majority is criticizing this thing. But I think it would have been solved by like better positioning from Apple's part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but that's not the Apple way, is it? Like Apple is really about like, this is the best thing yet, and we can't wait for you to try it, and it's awesome. And we came up with a new color. It's called green, and that kind of Apple talk.
Nice.
That they will never say anything like, well, it's our first version. Give us some slack. Like that's not what they do. They, yeah, that's who they are. But what I meant with my question, did we hype it too much, is like in the build up to this event, like it was a public secret. Like we all knew Apple was going to do something glassy. And then perhaps their image or their releases before, like because of that we were expecting a lot, maybe too much. And then in addition to the marketing side that you just said, like those two together perhaps made it an unfair race. Like we expected the world and more from this redesign.
But also, like, to be fair, like our phones and we use our phones a lot, like on the daily basis. And they're not cheap either. Like what's the new Apple phone? Like $100 to $2,000, depending on if you're going for the Pro Max or the Max Plus, whatever they're called. And then if you want to have like 256 gigs, or you want to, they're expensive, and like they're expensive, and they're at the core of like everything that we do. It's how we communicate with our family and friends. It's part of like our work as well. So it's like that, like we spend like 50% of our day on our phone. Well, especially us, if we're like testing things on mobile and doing things like that. So it has an effect on our lives, to be overly intense, but it does.
Yeah. Well, that makes looking at it that way. If you're very concerned about what it looks like, well, then that's a valid reason to be concerned. Like, well, I use this thing a lot, and I don't want it to be annoying.
My wife actually, like UI changes affect people. Like my wife, for example, we use a banking app, and they've moved where you're able to transfer or pay bills. So CIBC has an app where you're able to do like normal banking stuff, but they moved everything under this transfer button, what they've called transfer. But under transfer, you can do e-transfers, which makes sense. You can do bill payments, which is not really a transfer, it's a bill payment. So like the title of it,
right?
If they're moving, you're dealing with people's money in that case. It's like, I'm trying to pay my bills, manage my money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you've deployed a terrible UX, and it affects my life because it's, number one, money is important because it's a very stressful thing. And if you're not deploying something that's solid, then it can leave a bad taste in people's mouths. So I think it's similar, but it's the phone that you do everything with. To a lesser degree.
Yeah. That's true. And and then some people say like, well, there's an accessibility setting somewhere where you can reduce the liquidness and the transparency. But that's probably hidden somewhere in a fifth level of a settings menu somewhere. Yeah. To be honest, at times it feels like they picked the first kid off Dribble and let him design the whole thing, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to beat this thing. It's positioning. They could have treated this Liquid Glas as just like an additional treatment. So like, it's nice when it's applied to like the video player within Apple Music. It's nice when it's applied to an element that you want to elevate to like level 2 or 3, just to separate it from like secondary actions. And if they didn't mention it at all and then push the rest, the design community would have been, instead of posting hate, they would have been like, how do I create this thing? How do I create this thing that I saw in a video versus this is Liquid Glas? Then this is going to change everything. This is going to change everything. They pushed a design treatment as a feature versus just part of the experience.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you would have said to, like, if you were in charge of the keynote, you would have the Liquid Glas be something in the end, like, oh, by the way, we call this Liquid Glas.
I wouldn't have said anything.
All right.
I wouldn't have said anything at all. The design community, I would have pushed all the features. They have the call screening. If you're stuck on hold, the messages, so like hiding messages that are just like spam calls, like in a separate folder. So you're focusing on like who you're talking to on a day-to-day basis. Apple CarPlay, the improvements there, which I use on a daily basis, which is great.
Me too.
The airplane tracking, which is really cool actually, because that's an edge case. But like I pick up friends or family from the airport, and having that tracker as I'm timing my pickup, it's like amazing. They have some really like life improving features that they could have sold and then not spoken about the Liquid Glass whatsoever. And then design community was like, how do I do that in Figma? And then there would have been a bunch of tutorials trying to figure out how to download this template of the Liquid Glass thing. And we would have been in love with it. But instead they oversold it. They oversold the wrong thing.
It was basically the first thing they showed.
Which is weird.
Yeah. From maybe a design leadership position, if I can call us that. We're not like literally leaders, but from maybe a better word is the design community or the design profession. The fact that something like Apple starts with design, and OpenAI spends $6.5 billion on design is a good sign. Design is front and center again for the first time in a while, which is cool. And that I think that's a good sign, regardless of how they market it and if it's accessible or not, readable or not. But just the fact that they have a big announcement around design, I think is a cool thing. It gives us a little bit of spotlight.
I think so. I think there's a resurgence or a wave of design coming back. And I think we got a bit lost with the flat design, which like we have trends that come and go, but I think that trend lasted longer than it should have. We were dipping into skeuomorphism, to your point, and doing things that resemble like actual physical things. And then the obvious kind of pivot was flat design. And we saw this trend coming back to something 3D, but I think we stayed in flat design a bit too long. We lost a bit of that personality, like Wealthsimple into like 3D design. Like we were going into this realm of very like unemotional, stark, almost clinical design. And we missed like the human part of design, but I think we're going in that direction.
Yeah. Well, looking at it that way, the Liquid Glass is very nature-like, very alive, because it's basically like drops of water. So that's the opposite of what you say about like the flat design, which is lifeless in a way. So that you can relate something like that, like a change to make it more human in an age of AI, which is, I think, a good thing. And I like, in the current swing, I like it, but I like how it's a wave, not in a water metaphor wave type way, but just like we go flat, now we go 3D and human-like, and then at some point we will be like, well, we're overdoing it now. Let's make it more flat. And then 10 years later, it's like, well, maybe we're too flat now. Let's go back to 3D. Yeah, it repeats itself.
It is. It's the pendulum swing. We're going like we know what the next trend is going to like. I think it's pretty obvious where we're going to go now. So it's going to be 3D, very shiny bubbles, like the initial, like the first iteration of macOS. Remember that had that little glossy, bubbly design, and all the icon folders are glossy. I think we're going in that direction again, with a twist of like the kind of newer, like the 2025 version of whatever that is. And then we'll go back to like a flat / 3D, and then we'll pivot to something else.
Yeah. A fun thing is that, we're both, quote unquote, complaining about features hiding behind a design announcement that's getting way more attention than it should have. But then, we're now about 30 minutes in our conversation, and we're mostly talking about that design change as well. Shouldn't we talk a little bit about those features and how they got there and like the user experience of it all? Or are we perhaps part of the Liquid Glass issue as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we highlighted some. Well, here's the point. Let's pivot off of this design. So, like, what's your favorite feature that they launched, non-class related?
The spotlight changes is something I like a lot. I use Spotlight. So when you press Command Space Bar, then you get like the search thingy. I use it all the time for like a quick calculation or to find a file or to switch like currencies. Like I have 2 clients in Canada, and then they talk about Canadian dollars. I'm like, what's that in euros? That kind of thing. And then you have all these like applications that you can purchase on top or to replace the Spotlight, which I never quite got a hold of, mostly because of my fault. I didn't really spend enough time testing them and finding the right one. But with now, like the native solution that I've been stuck with for all these years gets a big improvement. It's all like all the bells and whistles you would expect are now going to be in the spotlight as well. With smart autocomplete and suggestions like, hey, you're working on this thing now. You're most likely going to use this thing, and then you have some clipboard improvements and shortcuts and all these things. I think that will help me a lot as someone who's already using Spotlight like all the time. So that's my favorite. And a few of the cleanups, for example, the phone app, like they made it simpler, are going to make it simpler, which is that those two I think are the ones I like best, with Spotlight being the number one out of those two.
Yeah, finding what you need quickly, because that's what happens on the phone, right? So you have whatever 7 pages of apps. You're not. They don't all fit on the one screen, so you're tempted to just go, oh, I want to find the thing I want through that Spotlight. So transitioning that feature, and making it even better on the desktop. Yeah, I like that one as well.
It's a lot of info, in the WWDC keynote, and then people talking about it, and you have interviews and recordings and people with opinions. So I tend to forget quite a few of the things. But did they mention anything about the search in stuff like mail? Do you recall? Because that's something, if you're talking about you mentioned finding things quicker, like that's a friction point. And I think that's very design related. You look at a flow. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like something related that I like to your point about searching things quickly. Something that I tried to do, and I assumed that they would have it already, was I take an abundant amount of photos. And it's hard for me to keep track of where they all are. So I'm scrolling through 2025, 2024, 2023 to find a specific image. But you're able to now be descriptive of what you're trying to look for.
Yeah.
So if you type in Tyler with a red hat, it'll find it, which is really, it was really useful, because I tried that the other day. It didn't. I just assumed that they would have it, but they've actually launched descriptive search, which is interesting.
Yeah. So you mean it's already there, or do you mean launch as in it will be there?
It will be there as part of the Liquid release.
Okay. It's funny how you call it the Liquid release and not the official name Apple gave it. But what I wanted to say, like, part of my day-to-day design work is looking at an existing product with existing user flows, making a map of that entire flow, finding where there's friction, where people drop off, and then seeing if there's a way to improve or reduce the friction, or reduce the number of people dropping off at a certain point, and finding things quicker. I think that's a big improvement in any user flow. You always have to find a file to upload or scroll through a list of options or whatever. So, finding the picture quicker, which you said, that's something I struggle with as well, by the way, with all these pictures on my phone. So I think that's a big improvement. That's, I think, something the design communities should focus on, like Apple did real design work in quite a few places for this upcoming update, but it's not getting the attention it deserves. I think that's the overall message, perhaps, of our little talk here. Like, we're as a design community, we're focusing on the wrong things. And if I may say so, I think back in my day, I've been designing for 10 years now. I'm very, very old. Not even on 25% of my career, I think, if I look at the age when I can retire. But anyway, earlier in my career, there was a lot of talk, and we talked about it as well on our show, like the seat on the table, the design table seat. That's something designers want, but then I think we want to be taken serious, but we're not. And I think part of it is because all we talk about is Figma versus something else. Figma versus, look at me and my sticky notes. We want to do fun things and fun little exercises during our workshops. This is a perfect opportunity to be taken more serious if we talk about the real design work Apple is doing next to the Liquid Glas stuff. Liquid Glas is just the UI top layer. We should talk more about the problems they've solved, and I want Apple to talk more about how they solved it and how they do it, because that's a way to get a little bit more respect for the designer. Like, they made my life easier. They made my workflow shorter and quicker and easier. So that's, I think, my bad aftertaste at the moment. Like, yeah, it's true. Liquid Glass isn't as readable as it should be. The accessibility is not as good, but let's focus on the real important stuff, because, we can rotate the contrast button and make it better.
Yeah.
Not the biggest problem.
I mean, I'm a big like ROI of design guy.
Yeah.
And I watched what was a podcast or some kind of thing that came up on my Instagram feed about the triad of like marketing, sales, and branding. And then to truly see the impact of branding, the vehicle is marketing and sales. So that's how you measure the impact. How does design and branding show up in sales? Well, it comes up in the pitch decks when the sales team is presenting the product. How does it come up in marketing? It's like the ads, the website, the app itself. Like design is, yes, it's the rounded buttons, but it's facilitating these two different pillars through design, and that's the differentiator. And I think that's how design should be positioned versus like the aesthetic treatment. Like, yes, things have to look great because that's part of your brand, but design is driving these two pillars, like whether it's product design, sales, it's driving these different pillars through design, and it's not reliant on just because it looks good, people are going to use it. It's the UX. It's all encompassing.
Yeah, it's true. I think you get diminishing returns, UI wise. Like at some point you have the layout, the spacing, gestalt, like all these things. You have them, good enough, like 7 out of 10 score.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, sure, it can be prettier. It can be more in your face with a, world-class animation, but it's probably not the most important thing to focus on. So I think I agree with you. Like maybe we should zoom out a little bit as designers. Like we're part of a bigger world of software and things outside of the screen where you can see that software.
Yeah, because like I go back to early in my career, something that kind of flipped the switch. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but back in the day when you were doing action script flash ads, banner ads for companies.
Oh yeah.
To follow the trend of dating myself. The worst looking banner ads from a design perspective perform the best, which like reinforces your story that you're telling. So it's just like it can look great. It doesn't have to be super polished. It could be 70% there. It's the other pieces of the recipe that convert or gets the ROI in the end.
That's true. Yeah. I don't want to turn this into a UI versus UX debate. Like it's still both in all cases. The answer is always both. But I think that the balance is a bit out of whack for this Apple WWDC talk. Like I think we really agree on that. Like it's like there's too much Liquid Glass talk going on.
I know. Like again, there's so many cool features that I'm going to use. Like Apple CarPlay and messages. I don't have to deal with those. Insert your here's your 4-digit code to log into your account. Messages get like overrun in your messaging list. And I'm just focusing now on my family texts and my friends' messages, which is less important. They're doing a good job of reducing distractions and allowing you to focus on what's important at the time. Like the commute assist, which is great. So I go different places. So it's learned where I drive depending on what time, but now it's going to be able to trigger traffic alerts before I even get into the car, because it knows that I leave home to go pick up my son at 5 o'clock, but it'll trigger before, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before I leave. So it tells me, okay, there's traffic, maybe you should leave earlier. So these improvements are great. So overall, I love what they've done. And I'm not distracted by the glass. So I'm going to try to replicate the Figma glass thing in Figma later this week, but that's
all right. Well, the mask is coming off and we're seeing the real Tyler now. You're just a UI ninja, it turns out.
Yeah, I'll probably have to vibe code my way to doing it, but I'll try and Figma first.
Well, turn it into a template or a little info product people can purchase, and then you can really make bank.
Yeah,
and then get lost in your transfer button and not being able to get to the money.
I'm with you there.
All right. Well, lots of things to think about, really, about the Liquid Glass. Well, not the Liquid Glass. Let's forget the Liquid Glass and assume they will improve it. but lots of inspiration to take from all the little improvements they did, all the little smart things, the little notifications and things they thought about before you think about it, which I think is a good experience. We can be a little bit more positive, I guess, as a design community.
I think that's what we're finding in this discussion. I think we're both in agreement. Like overall, impressive, not distracted by the noise. Like spotlight, searching for images, the automation shortcuts, which we didn't get into, but like anything that automates, I'm in. We were following that trend.
Oh yeah.
But overall positive for me.
Yeah, same here. That's not how I started yesterday's keynote. That's also not how I woke up. But I think now, after this talk, I'm calmed down and positive again.
Yes, we've come down we've come down to reality, which is good.
Yeah,
or having a decent perspective on the true impact of what they're launching.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the great stuff about this little show that we have going on is and it's not even very obvious in this episode per se, but with you being in-house and me being freelance, like you have two big worlds within the bigger design world with different perspectives and needs and requirements. But for this episode, I think as a whole, the differences between our type of design work isn't as important, but still you have two people with together 20 plus years of experience. So you get a real opinion, down to earth, real opinion from the design front, battling the design battle every day, instead of just your average clickbaity game changer influencer post.
Exactly. And if you want to hear more, go to designdablepodcast.com, which you've done a really good job on, by the way. And you can actually subscribe to our newsletter so you can keep up to date with all our new releases, updates, and a little blurb about each other. So if you want to learn more about Nick, please go to designdablepodcast.com. It's a very nice bio there.
Yeah, it is. Work in progress, but still quite something already.
Exactly.
Hey, well, that's it for this little bonus episode. And back to normal next time, which I think is about branding. I think that's the thing we ended up with the final episode. So back to branding, which I think is a nice extension of this episode. Like people expect a lot of Apple. They branded and marketed too much about something. Should have been different, but more on that next week or the week after. 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Yeah. So yeah, like Tyler said, like and subscribe and designtablepodcast.com if you want to be the first to hear all about it. All right, next time.